Thanks very much. Yeah, so my name is John Brady, and I'm the Cultural Officer and Tour Guide in Bailieborough Courthouse. Now, the building itself was put together in about 1817, but in 1833 they built a Bridewell jail on the back of it. Now, at the moment we're making the Bridewell jail into an interpretive centre and a museum for the plantation times and famine times and stuff out the back. So that's where I come in. I work in that office there on the side of the building. So that's what I do. And I research the history of Bailieborough, the history of Knockbride. I do little talks in the courtroom. And Knockbride kind of falls into the places where I'd be researching about it. It hits a lot of the things that I'd be working on. So, and St. Bridget is a part of that, and we'll soon discover that. That's who we're talking about here. So that was a portrait by Patrick Joseph Toohey of St. Bridget. He did that in the 1930s, just to illustrate who we're here talking about. So this man is Thomas J. Barron. So he was the headmaster in Knockbride National School. He was born in 1903 and he died in 1992. He later would become the headmaster of the model school in Bailieborough as well. And all through the time he was teaching, he was also working on his other interests, which was mostly archaeology and history. And in Knockbride, he would have, in the summertime, he would have gone on little adventures and done little archaeological digs and stuff in his spare time. One of the things he rediscovered was the Klick Head, the three-faced deity, which I'll be talking about. And he brought that to national and international prominence. And that was a big part of life in Knockbride in the early Iron Age, late Bronze Age. But I'll be talking about that. This is him with one of his friends, Tom McIntyre, the playwright and the poet. He was a Bailieborough man as well. And there's a little program that Tom McIntyre did for, I think it was either BBC or RTE in 1976. And he goes around Bailieborough talking about the history of Bailieborough. There's even footage of Bailieborough Castle on that program, just before they knocked it down. And there he is talking to our Tom in the old graveyard just behind the new Church of Ireland in Bailieborough. That graveyard, that slab there is one of the ancestors of the Jameses, the famous literary family in America. Their great-grandfather would be buried in that cemetery. There's also famine pits in that cemetery, belonged to the workhouse that was just under the hill, really, in Bailieborough. So this map, I'll be referencing it quite a bit throughout the night. A lot of these places have direct relation to St. Bridget. Tom Barron, through reading extensively through old manuscripts and various other old texts, kind of unearthed that St. Bridget was born in this area. She wasn't born in Ford, or she wasn't born in Kildare. She was born up in Cornassus, in the top corner there. But I'll go through why that is. He's marked out all the different churches there was at least 3 churches belonged to Bridget in this area. And the townland names reflect that. And certain names of fields actually as well, even in modern times. And there's certain forts as well that have a lot to do with Bridget. But we'll go through that as we go along. So, one of the tribes that has a direct kind of relation to the Klick Head would be the Ginga. And the Lugera were related to the kings of Tara later on. The Ginga would have had a little contingent in Connacht as well. I'll be talking about them. So, in the 4th and 5th century, early on, we're looking at the provinces of Ireland. So there's 5. When people talk about Meath, they're not talking about County Meath back then. They're talking about Meath. It was like the middle of Ireland. Cavan was a part of that. Cavan was actually, just after this, Cavan became part of Connacht. And it wasn't until 1586 that it became part of Ulster. It led nicely into plantation times. So back in the 5th century, when we'd be talking about St. Bridget, when you hear Meath, that's what Meath was. So Cavan was part of that. The Gaelinga, just before the 5th century, in the run-up to that, they would have been in charge of everything from Scale Lake to the banks of the Boyne, the Gaelinga. They would have had tribes up on Lough and Lea as well. So they were a huge tribe. And there was tribes within that tribe that were slave tribes. And that's important. Later on I'll tell you why that's important. So that's the way the provinces are now. So you can see where Cavan is part of Ulster. But if we flick between the two, you can see it's Meath. So sometimes that was overlooked when they were reading old texts. This is Klick Head. So there's a replica here, but this is the real thing in the National Museum. Now he's in the room with the Ardagh Chalice and the Tower Brooch and the Cross of Cong and all those things. It's a national treasure. Basically the three faces, these are the three faces, that represent Lu, the god Lu, for the Gaelinga at least. And it was the king, the craftsman, and the warrior, basically. There's other people that say it represents Conn of the 100 battles. He would have been a chieftain back in Iron Age times, or just before Iron Age times. And that moved into Connacht, and that's where Conn of the Connacht comes from. Is there any O'Connors here? No? Well, O'Connors would have a direct line to Conn of the 100 battles. And they used to say that the Klick Head was maybe Conn. They used to worship Conn because he was like a warlord kind of thing. But really it's the god Lu. They were like sun-worshipping people, the Gaelinga. Let's see if there's a... Yeah, also in Knockbride we have a Bulan Stone near the old church. I'll be going into the old church details a little bit later on. So Bulan Stone. In Christian times, they kind of used this is on Lough and Lea actually. This is on the mountain in Bailieborough. The one, I don't have a photograph of the one in Knockbride, but they're more or less the same. What they did with Bulan stones, Bulan just means bowl. So there'd be a depression in the stone, and if there was a hunting area or a sacred area somewhere else, they'd take a stone from there and bring it to where the Bulan stone was and put that little stone in that hole so it would have the power of that place where they live. That's what they used to do. But in Christian times, it became a place for cures and things. If you use the water in the Bulan stone, it would cure skin ailments and things like that. The Bulan stone on the mountain has a relationship with the one in Knockbride as well, because they say it's a place where it shows the kneecap of St. Patrick, that he knelt there, and it left the mark in the stone. It's the same in Knockbride. They have the same tail. So this is my sketch of the Pantheon that the Klick Head might have been a part of, up on the hill of Dromeg. Dromeg just means the hill of the dead. There's other names for it as well. Slieve na Trí G is like the hill of the three gods. So in Iron Age times, late Bronze Age, early Iron Age, they worshipped like this. So the skull mightn't necessarily be an enemy, it could be a relative. They'd let you kind of decay and then take your skull back and put you at pride of place during celebrations and things like that. Sometimes it was an enemy, and it was for a different reason. So these are all artifacts that were in Klick. This is a little sketch, but they were actually found. This little horse statue, it's meant to be a horse statue. Tom Barron actually remembers it being Tom Barron's from Knockbride originally, and he remembers it being in his yard, and they used to play with it, and then he doesn't remember where it went after that. But the little head on the other side with the scratch on the eye, that's supposedly Balor. It's another god that they used to use. The bearded figure there, that is up in the National Museum. It's not on display though. They reckon that Loch Ramor gets its name from him. It's a thick neck, rower, it comes from him. The Bridget in the middle, that would be like the early Bridget, the pagan Bridget, is missing as well. And the ram's skull, or the ram's sculpture, is destroyed. But the Klick Head survives. And that's in the National Museum, in the treasury room of the National Museum. The writing on that is Ogham, and it just says Lou on that, in Ogham. There was actually a brooch found on Klick Hill, or near Klick Hill, and it had Darbra written on it in Ogham, the protector of the hill. And a lady used to wear it on her shawl going to Mass. And then it vanished. Nobody knows where it went. But it was a common sight in Knockbride on a Sunday at one stage. But it would have been from the Iron Age. So there was a big cult of the head. Like, the head was very important to people in the Iron Age, just before Christianity kind of took hold. This is from, I'll zoom in a bit. This would be from northern France into southern England, into Cornwall, and all the way up. There's all similar things to the Klick Head. None quite the same, but there's Janiform ones that have two heads. Then there's things like this. Here's one that was maybe halfway sculpted. Maybe there's like a halo around it. It's early Christian. The reason I did the pantheon that way is for this one. This is like a recreation of a pantheon of sculptures and skulls in France. My French isn't too good, but it's a place called Roquepertuis in France. Now, the Romans actually destroyed it and buried it, and it was rediscovered a little later on in the 1800s. But they reckon this is the way things were done in the Iron Age, and the Klick Head would have been in some similar form, some similar pantheon. That's just it there with the skulls. Now, they're probably relatives of the people who ran the place. So there was a huge, that's just a close-up, huge cult of the head, and that was pagan times, just before Christianity, just before Patrick, just before Bridget. And we've moved on a lot since then. Do you reckon we have? There's no more cult of the head, no more worshipping skulls and things like that. Do you think so? Well, not quite, because this is Drogheda. And that's Oliver Plunkett. We just put them in gold boxes now. And also, the other day, you might have heard it on the news, there's this. Yeah. So, this is actually a piece of her skull. I can show you exactly what piece it is. Ex ossibus means the bones of, and de Brigide just means Bridget. I can show you where it came from later on in the talk. So this is where it's from. See those two kind of things meeting in the middle? One of those sides, that's where it's from. There was, if you look at it, you can kind of see that. See the shape? It's there somewhere. We're in that area. Occipital bone in the back of the head there. She had a lot of little relics around the place. There was, I'll be talking about that in a sec, but there was teeth belonged to her, made their way all the way to Melbourne. There was unspecified parts in Strasbourg. The bit that came back the other day was from a church in Portugal, Lumiere, I think was the neighbourhood. I'll show you a picture of the church. And there's other, where was the other place now that had bits of her? There was parts of her ribs, I think, in Dundalk. And they were handed away as well, a long time ago. So the map that I'll be going through is basically this area. So the lake over there is Coronary. I've marked off there's a chronog there. And Tom Barron used to be on that lake on a little rowboat, and there was an island that he actually excavated on that lake. This fort here is Líos na Gréanán, so that was important to the Iron Age people. That was like a fort of the sun. Usually Druids' temples and things like that get that name, Líos na Gréanán. Up here we have one of Bridget's successors, Mound. He was like little Aidan. It's like my Aid Og. Dromaig actually was called Mound's Ridge for a while as well, because it was near where the church of his was, overlooking it. That's where the little school is. I'll be coming back to Drumamuck. This is basically Klick Hill. I zoom in now. There's a crannog there. This fort down here has a souterrain on it. You know what a souterrain is? It's like a tunnel, or some people say it's like an escape, like a panic room that they had on forts, but really, they don't really know what it was. They're like stores, sometimes grain stores, but it's all conjecture. In 1836, there was a family that owned that side of the road called the Longmoors, and they went digging just to see what it was. Like, it was still in how you see it now, the circular pattern, and they knew that there was a little depression in the middle, so they went digging, and they actually found the little bits of stone, the Klick Head, the Ram's Head, and maybe the Bridget's Head as well, in that souterrain. And it was given to, well, it was built into a wall for a while to show it off. The Longmoors did that. And then a lot of years later, Tom Barron would have come across it when the Halls owned the land. And they kind of let him have it. And he was in great friends with the head of the museum at the time, up in Dublin, the National Museum. Adolf Marr was his name. If you Google him, you'll have fun. Tom Barron and himself were great pals, and they got together that the Klick Head should be in the museum, in the National Museum. And that's where it is now. And it's thanks to Tom Barron and Adolf Marr. So this is actually Klick Hill, the fort on Klick, that one there. We'll ignore that quarry behind. And I'll be talking a little bit about this area as well. This is actually a wedge tomb. Very important in the lifetime of Bridget, but I'll get to that. That's a close-up of it there. Now, most wedge tombs, they face southwest, so it catches most of the sun. Sometimes they're aligned for solstices and equinoxes and things like that. It's unclear what this one was because the roof has gone off it, so it's a bit different. It looks a bit different now than it did 1,500 years ago. It's visible from the road, but I have little photographs that I got online. I'll show you a little bit later. So you can see how close everything is. And like Knockbride is just up around the corner there. So there's another fort just next door, you could say, just down the road a bit, back towards Bailieborough. I marked it out just to make it easy. So in the perimeter of their territory, there's a crannog over there. See this? That's Drumkiri Lake. Some might know it. In the forest, does everyone know Bailieborough Forest? Yeah, you've walked around it. There's a huge fort on, you know where the pump house is? On the far side of the lake. Well, if you go up that hill just behind the pump house, you'll get to the fort. This fort was owned by the Unélans. Dara Unélan was the tribe leader, the chieftain. And he had a son called Cormac. They're important because when they migrated up into the north, into Armagh, Dara sat on he was an abbot in Armagh, one of the first after Patrick. And when Cormac left, he was the first Archbishop of Armagh after St. Patrick. That they lived there. This was their little cattle enclosure. I'll go into the cattle and the livestock a little bit later that they had. This is the main fort. This thing here with the blue, can you see the oval just inside that? See this oval this barrier of the ditches? Well, on this side, it's the Cavan Road. On that side, it's the Shercock Road. And this was the ecclesiastical enclosure that went with the fort in the woods. The guy that ran this was called Benin. And I'll show you a picture of him. There's a stained glass window to him in Kilbannan, over in the west. This is just the main part of the fort there. It would have been a seat of learning and stuff for young clergymen, let's say in early Christian times. Possibly the first settlements in Bailieborough were just below that on Church Lane, because people would live around where especially the ecclesiastical settlements, they'd live close to those for trading and food and all that kind of thing. So one of the reasons we know we can tie Bridget to, and it's to do with that fort as well, we can tie Bridget to Knockbride because of this book. It's the Shankus Moore. Now the Shankus Moore was revised in around 438. And judging by the things that Tom Barron says about Bridget, she would have been, 438, she would have been about 17 or 18 at that stage. It goes like his life story of Bridget is based on the fourth life that was written about her, the fourth biography. And he goes through that. In that book, it's believed that Patrick died in 461. Most people believe that. And that was 30 years before Bridget died in her fourth biography. So that would mean she died in 491, not 524. And if she died in 491 when she was 80, that means she was born in 411. Going by the books that Tom Barron read. And this book ties her to Knockbride, not Fort, not Kildare. Because her father was one of the signatories in this book, Dovtuck. In other legends of St. Bridget, they call him a chieftain, but really he was an olam. It was like a chief poet or a chief kind of lawman, like a Brehon. The Shankus Moore is about Brehon law. It's about the kind of traditions that you have to adhere to for partnerships and selling of things and land disputes and all that kind of thing. And accidents even. That's the reason it was revised, because of an accident with a chariot. It's just more pages of it here. I think this next one is my favorite one, this one. Now, if anyone wants to see that, wants to read it, it's written in archaic Irish, but Tom Barron could read that. If you go on, there's a Trinity website that has all kinds of manuscripts on it. I can give you the name of it, if I can give you my email, and you can read it yourself. So this is Benin. This is in Kilbannan, over near Tuam. Kilbannan is Benin's church. And near Bailieborough, we have Drumbannan, which is the hill of Benin. So it ties him to that through ancient townland names. He came from Cashel, and he kind of went back down there after. He was on his own little missions as well, with St. Patrick in tow, and he kind of went back down the country after the O'Neillons left up into Armagh. Benin went off on his way. He would have been raised in Cormac. That would have been Dara's son that ended up in Armagh as well. This is another guy that was in around Curleck. This is Cairnick. He had other names. There was Caranog is another name for him. This is actually a statue in Wales, because he was from Cornwall, and he did a lot of missionary work in Wales as well. These are real people. It's not just like myths and legends. He would have had a hand in Bridget's second consecration. Like, she was consecrated first in around 429, and then again in 439, 10 years later. And it happened on or near Curlech, and I'll show you on the map. A lot of people think she was consecrated as an abbess initially in Offaly, but it was in Knockbride, and I'll show you why. So I'll be talking about this pound a little bit later on. This mound I'll be talking about right now, I think. So this is it in real life. This is it on the 1835 Ordnance Survey map. I'll be referencing this a few times. It's going to surprise you what I'm going to show you in a little while. But it says mound. So it doesn't say fort. It doesn't say, enclosure. It says mound. That's important. And that's it there from the road. That's up near Lisgar Lake. It's just off the road off the main road up to away from Lisgar Lake. So that's it. Zoomed in. Now, can you, I don't know, I shouldn't have put the circle on it, but can you see the kind of trees in the middle? See the way there's a kind of a triangle towards the house? That's because it's a site of an old church from early Christian times. It's often called a Druid's temple as well, but it was a church because the townland is called Cavan's Keldra, and it's actually Kevin's Kildara. And Kildara is Oak Church. So that's just other pictures of it. You can see the lumps and bumps they aren't glacial deposits, so they aren't. There was a structure there. That's just another view of it. That's the triangle there. There's a mound there, and you can even see on the field boundary is really unusual as well. I'll be showing you other field boundaries that are quite peculiar too later on. So this is in Ballintubber Abbey. It was a little oak church that they made. They reckon St. Patrick would make churches like this as he was going around the place doing his missions. They weren't elaborate, huge buildings with stained glass or anything like that. They were little huts made of oak and wattle. So this is way up in the corner. I'll show you on the old maps as we go along. This is in a place called Knocknashammer, at the far end of Knockbride, really, in the townland. And there's a tiny depression in the field. Can you see it in the middle of the circle I tried to draw? Can you see it? Little depression there. It'll become clear now in a sec. And plus, notice all the other little bits and pieces around. Like that's not drainage pipes. That's archaeology. So here's a better picture of it. See the little dot? So that's actually a holy well, St. Bridget's well. This would have been the site of St. Bridget's second church in the area. Now, I'll go through her life, but she would have made this before she went on her missions. Now, she made this church and then went to Kildare and did what she did in Kildare then. In her life, that was 411 to 491. This is the 1835 Ordnance Survey map, and it says Holy Well. And on the National Monuments Service website, it marks that as a place of ritual. And in the folklore of Knockbride, there was a man called Tom Sullivan that would have spoken with Tom Barron a lot about the different names of things and the folklore attached to things going way back. And he remembered a lot of it. He was a very old man in the 1940s. There was cures in this well. It was always Bridget's well. And there was cures for skin ailments and bone things like joints and things like that in that well. And there's a lot of other Bridget's wells. There's 3,000 holy wells in Ireland. And about 14 or 15 of them are Bridget's wells. This is one in Ishnock in Roscommon. Lovely. Very picturesque. So there'll be people in that today, getting some goodness out of it somehow. This one is in Kildare. It's Bridget's Garden in Kildare. Maybe you know it. This is the one in Knockbride. Manhole cover. So it's totally forgotten. It's unbelievable. Now, it's marked on maps. Look, it says Holy Well. But this is how it's been forgotten, unfortunately. It's still there, you know. I mean, it could be an attraction if they took the manhole cover off. So this is the Downs survey. Moving on up in time, there was loads of surveys done just before the plantation times. The family that moved into the area of Knockbride would have been the Hamiltons originally. The Baileys moved into Bailieborough. That's where the name comes from. But on the 1607 map, there's ruins there of a church. That's the cross. There was 2 churches in Knockbride. See the 2 churches? That third one doesn't exist. So what were they marking on that map? Tom Barron reckons, and I agree with him, he's convinced me totally. There was a church up in Wood Hill. It was like her last church that she made before she died. She came back after her missions down the country. She came back to Knockbride and died there. That was like her last church. I'll show you. Just other things that you can see. See Kilkelly. That's actually Bailieborough. Killancullig. Yeah, Kilkelly. And that's a little picture of the tower house that the castle used to look like in Bailieborough, in the woods. And Clonkey, that's just another way of spelling it. Does anyone know how Clonkey came about, the name? It was one of the Rileys. Yeah, the clan of the blind. Yeah, Clonkey. He was blinded by troops up behind the Pale. He had a choice. It wasn't a very good choice. He was asked if he wanted his arms or his eyes or functions to have heirs. And he was like, well, I'll take my eyes because I can't be a soldier without my arms and I can't be a warrior without heirs. So they blinded him. And then Clonkey became, he went back to where he lived, and Clonkey became like the clan of the blind. That's where Clonkey comes from. But we're in Castlerahan here, so it doesn't really matter. This is more or less what an early Christian ecclesiastical settlement looks like, or looked like. So the church was very simple. On Klick Hill, there was actually 2. There was one for women and one for men, believe it or not. And it's in the history books. It's written into all kinds of Bridget's lives. It's written in the book of Lismore that there was 2 separate ones. They would have had places for kind of metal work and tapestries and things like that on the hill as well as the churches. And they reckon one of St. Patrick's bells was made on Klick Hill, in one of the little workshops. So this is 2 of the unusual field boundaries that I was talking about earlier. So they're quite possible that there was something in the middle there in bygone days that kind of left its shadow, you know. This is way up near Seall, where the wind turbines are, you know, up that way. It's a good bit away from Knockbride. They reckon, Tom Barron reckons that Bridget was born up here somewhere. In Kill, it's called, little townland. I'll go into that in a minute. This is the Bodly Survey. So this is just a little bit later on after the Downs survey. So you can see some of the place names. Knockbride is there with the church. See? Liscar is there. Lear is there. Tandragee. Moybullough. Everyone has heard of Moybullough. That was very prominent. See Kilcolby. That's Bailieborough. Killancullig. It's just a different way of saying it. Galbally. There's another one, Drumbennan. See, Drumbennan is spelled B-E-N. Lisnelly is there. Capo is there. Lisdonnan. Corleck, Skay, Dromeg. So they're all there. This is the William Petty survey. So this was like 50 years or so, or 40 years into the plantation times. So a lot of the land was figured out by then. And you can see this belongs to James Hamilton. I'll show you where he lived. It's near Knockbride. But that was unfortified land. So this is outside his wall, outside the bond that he owned. That Dr. Bailey would have been William Bailey's son. He was the Bishop of Clonfert, and he ran that land until the Hamiltons married into it. But I just wanted to show you Knockbride there. Dromogue. See, it's a different way of saying it. That was Mogue's Hill, St. Maudo. But it lent itself very well to being changed from Maig to Mogue. Dromaig means Hill of the Dead. Dromogue means Maudo's Hill. That's Killan there, a little bit of Killan. So we'll go back to Lisdonan in Ruski, or near Ruski. So Lisdonan basically means the fort of Danu. So Danu was like the goddess for the pagans, the female goddess. And it was like the forerunner to Bridget, the earth goddess that Bridget was before the saint came along, before the real person came along. So they were the forts, belonged to Lisdonan there, Ruski's there. This one down here is it's going in towards Dromaig down here. So this is just a satellite image of it. There's the main, there's Lisnagranon there. There's another one there. So this is the National Monuments website. Drumnammuck. Anyone guess what that means? Drumnammuck. Sometimes. Yeah. Dovetuck, Bridget's father, would have kept pigs on that hill. And when she was a teenager, it's written in her lives, she took care of pigs on that hill. Bridget did. And it kept the name. She would have been very familiar with quernstones. This, like her mother was a slave, Brutchuk, and her mother belonged to a tribe called the Fohart people. And it was Fothairt, Fohart. And they were a little group within the people that Dovetuck belonged to. They were like a slave tribe within his tribe. And maybe that's how people think she was born in Fohart, but that's a place name. She was of the Fohart, not from Fohart. Huh?
Who said she didn't go home to Fohart to have her baby?
Well, I mean, that's another trail of Bridget. Fohart was the name of the tribe, not the place they were from. Also, she was a slave, so she couldn't move around freely. This is another hill. There's a hill not far from where she was born in Cornassus, and it was a bullying hill. Do you know what bullying is? In the summertime, teenage girls, usually girls, even up to like the 1900s, would go off to summer pastures on hills and things with cattle and with sheep as well. And it was called bullying, and they'd stay there for a month or two during the high summer. And they'd look after the cows in what was a wilderness at the time. It's not now because we have cars and all that kind of stuff. But she would have had that job for Dovetuck. She was the daughter of the slave, but Dovetuck would have owned her as well, Bridget. There's a hill, Cornassus basically is named Hill of the Spansels. So that's a spansel that they would have, see there was no fences and things back in those times, at least not like the way there is now, no electric fences. It's basically a hobble that you put on a cow so he can't run away too far, you catch him. They use them for all kinds of things. Like they use them on horses, they use them on dogs as well. So this is an Iron Age pig, believe it or not. It's a type that would have been common back then. It's basically a feral pig mixed with whatever strain of kind of domesticated pig they would have had. It's fairly like a boar. In America, they call them razorbacks. I don't know if you ever heard of that term. They basically have like a hair on the back that stands up, razorbacks. So these were the pigs that she would have taken care of up on Drumnamuck. And if you go to Knockbride, Drumnamuck is just kind of, you know, the National School. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's like the hill just on the other side of the National School. It's fairly big, fairly wide hill. So these are basically the shape and size of Iron Age cows. Like these would be the dairy cows, not the oxen. They were for different jobs. The cows were tiny compared to what we have now. Sometimes people think that the ring forts are small, like the cow enclosures are small, but the cows were small. And they'd have wars over these, like they'd kill each other over these. They were prize cows. But the oxen had different jobs. They were like for ploughs and things like that. These cows were special, you know. So this is up basically where Bridget's mother was from, Burchuk. Drutnamon is the druid that she was sold to by Dovetuck. He lived down at the other side of Knockbride in a little tiny townland. Drutnamon and Drutnamon are the same place. So basically she had her first church up here, and in Tom Barron's writings, along with Tom Sullivan, there's fields here. This is the well. See Bridget's well? That's the well I showed you. There's fields there called Bridge Fields, named after Bridget. And there's also a church field, but there's no church there. And in living memory, there was never a church there. But there's a church field. And there's a graveyard field as well. So they are there for some reason. Now, Moggie's Leap. See Saltus Ovis. That's actually in one of Bridget's lives. They mentioned Saltus Ovis. It's the leap of the bird. Moggy, or Maca, as he puts it there. Now, this is Tom Barron's map. Was the deity of the little tribe, the Fahard tribe. She was like a witch that could turn into a bird, like a crow. And they used to worship her and stuff. Now, the folklore about Moggie's Leap stayed in living memory. It was like a place that you weren't allowed to go. It was too dangerous to go. It's like a little waterfall. I don't know if even it's still there, but in those days it was. So you can tie Saltus Avis to her lives. And it's nowhere else. It's not in Louth. It's not in Kildare. It's in Knockbride. This is Knocknalosset. Now, this is where her last church was when she came back from Kildare, when she came back from her missions down the country. Wood Hill up in the top here. There's legends of wolf packs that lived up in Wood Hill, going way back. Obviously, the last wolf in Ireland was 1786 when it was shot. So the folklore about wolves in Wood Hill goes back further than that. So it just shows you how long things can survive by word of mouth and not bright. This is interesting here. See Crohan Brigella beside one of our first churches. So this is supposedly Crohan Brigella is where Bridget was consecrated. And it's often said that it's in Offaly. But it's in Knockbride. Sorry, but it is. There's a Skay. I've looked through townland names in both Louth and Kildare, and there's only one Skay in Louth, and it's not quite spelled the same way. The Skay that's here was named after Saint Skay. He was like a Scottish monk that came over after Bridget. There would have been an Augustinian friary there that was run through Kells. That was dismantled during the Reformation and then totally destroyed when Cromwell came over. That's Lucy Grain on again. So up on Dromaig, this is like the main part where I'll show you where the grave is and stuff. Doonbalg. Now, if you look at place names in Louth, place names in Kildare, there's none called Doonbalg that you can find. No townlands, no little hills. This was the hill where Niall of the Nine Hostages died. But he's buried down near Navan on Faughan, on that hill. And that ties, Niall of the Nine Hostages was related to the King Lugar, who employed Dovetuck, and it ties him to this hill, Fort of Dovetuck, see? So that's Bridget's Cathedral. Now, Bridget's Cathedral was built in 1300. So it wasn't like she was down there laying stones and stuff. What she had down there would have been similar to the little wooden church I showed you. And she had a little monastery and stuff for the Brigidine sisters that she was forming. That's just the interior of it, a very old photograph. It's a postcard, actually. So this is the Wedge Tomb in Dromaig. These are photographs from online. So this is the opening of it. I was going to point it with this. That's the opening there. This is the capstone. Now, when Dovetuck died, he was buried in there because he lived on that hill, and the Shankus Moore ties him to that hill. Now, he travelled between there and Tara because his king was the king of Tara after 455, but he was buried there where he lived. In one of her lives, O'Hanlon wrote it in the 1830s, I think it was. But he said she died in the northern province, Bridget, in 491. And she was buried with huge pomp and circumstance in the same tomb as her father in Dromaig. That's what it used to look like. That's what it should look like. That's Carrow Crom in Mayo. That's one of the most intact wedge tombs in Western Europe. That's what that should look like. But through successive antiquarians and this and that and the other, it was dismantled. One of the people that would have done little surveys and stuff on that was Rory de Valera. He wrote several books on the archaeology of Ireland. He would have been a son of Eamon. He would have been here way back working on books. And he has several things written about Dromaig, Rory de Valera. But as I say, that's what it looked like, facing towards the sun for certain times of the year. Oops. So this there's certain countries around the world that revere Bridget and her successor as well, which I'll talk about in 2 seconds. This one is from the church in Portugal that had her skull. The name is written on a poster now. I think it's the next one. This one. Lumiar, would it be? It's Portuguese, so I don't speak Portuguese. But that's the church she was in. That's the church where her relics came from just the other day, back to Kildare. Now, she had a successor, and actually February the 1st, they celebrate Bridget on February the 2nd in Portugal. I don't know why. They just do. Her successor died a year and a day after Bridget supposedly died. And her name was Dar Lugduck, or Lugduck. And basically, in Irish, that means daughter of Lugh, L-U-G-H. And who was the Klick Head? Lugh. So that's another thing that ties Knockbride to her successor, Bridget's successor. There's also a stone belonged to her in Glastonbury under kind of a different name. It's St. Bride's Stone. You can see it there, Glastonbury in the background. A lot of people go and touch that and they get cures and it does them some good. This is Mound. So he was one of the successors. He had the little, I'll show you now, a little kind of a monastery on the banks of the Coronary Lake. Some of it is still there, they reckon. One wall of it, anyway. That's him as an old man. He was a patron saint down the country as well. So this is the old church in Knockbride. Now there's a Church of Ireland and there's a Roman Catholic church. This is actually the early Christian church behind the Church of Ireland. There's like 76 gravestones in there, and the earliest is 1637 that they can read. So it goes back a good bit, back further than that even. They reckon some of the walls in there are pre-Reformation, way back, before the Reformation. And then it was built upon and still used. This is where the Hamiltons lived, something like that. They reckon they had a 4-story tower house. The one in Bailieborough Forest was 3 stories. And they would have had a fortified house and things like that. That's with the microphone there. The Augustinian friary that was run from Kells would have had turrets and stuff on it. So the old books say, and something like that. And it's drawn on old maps with turrets. This is where the castle was, the Pound. So some people might know, some people don't know. There's chalets near Skye for fishermen and things like that to go on holidays to. And it's just down here somewhere. Those chalets are built there, near the lake. So the Pound, there's still a pound field. Everyone know what a pound was in relation to the castles? Well, if you didn't pay your tithes to the church or to the landlord, he could take your cattle or your sheep or whatever, and he'd keep them in the pound and sell them at the next fair day to make up the rent that you couldn't cover. And that was a thing all the way up to the 1900s nearly. Later on, in 1798, and people like the Ribbon Men and the Molly Maguires and stuff like that, they would have raided pounds. So pounds were a constant, really, in small towns and villages in Ireland for a long time. But that's the pound. That's on the 1835 map. That's it there on satellite view. See, there's some of it left there. There's walls of it left. The chalets are here. You see my arrow there? So this is the Roman Catholic. No, this is the Church of Ireland church in Knockbride. The other church is behind those trees there. And this is St. Bridget's in Knockbride, named after St. Bridget. I wonder why. That's St. Bridget's cross. So I can take any questions you have now, if you want to ask me any questions. I can go back through, if you want me to go back through anything, want to have another look, I can do that. There's the map here, if you want to take a picture of it on your phone or whatever. This map comes from a Bailieborough annual. It's made by Tom Barron. He published the little thesis he did on St. Bridget in a Bailieborough annual in 1990. It would have been a couple of years before he died. So you can have a look at that if you want, close up. Do you want to go back through any photographs and have another look? Is there anything you're wondering about? Yeah?
I'm flabbergasted.
Yeah? Yeah.
I was born in Ford.
Oh, right. Are you sure? Are you sure you weren't born in Knockbride?
I'm going to ask for a round of applause first, I think. That we're doing the rest.
Right.
What struck me about the talk is, I think if you look at Irish antiquity, especially in folklore in its early days, all the work done by teachers and by educators, and without a lot of we wouldn't have to work.
Yeah.
I worked in Lough Crew, and Eugene Conwell
Yeah.
was an educator as well. He
Yeah.
was a schools inspector.
Yeah.
But yes, we'll go for questions now.
Yeah.
Or are we all just thinking, what I think, so are we basically going to go to Kildare now and break the bad news?
Well, I don't know how we're going to.
Kildare, it was
Kildara.
Kildara
Yeah.
in Cavan.
Yeah.
So why has nothing been done about this, about rectifying
I'm not sure.
history?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, Tom Barron wrote this in, like, this is basically a talk on what he wrote. And he wrote this in, like, the early 90s, even into the 80s. And he has all the checks and balances, all the receipts. Like, you can tie it to Knockbride, whether people like it or not. Like, the Shankus Moore is what ties it to everything. And Dovetuck was, like, the oldham for that. One of the oldhams. There was 3.
So how did it happen then that Kildare was established as the place rather than Knockbride? How would that
They had a cathedral. They had a cathedral. Big cathedral. Like, there's no cathedral in Knockbride. Yeah, there's a cathedral in
the cathedral was built in when?
1300.
Yeah.
And after that, it rolled. Yeah.
I think if you look at what McBride did with her well, I think probably Kildare deserve her.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah, at least they're making an effort. Yeah. Yeah.
The land that that well's on,
Oh, I wouldn't be sure.
be done to,
I don't know. I wouldn't be sure.
don't know.
I could find out.
Find out, see if it could be resurrected.
Yeah.
It's a treasure.
No problem.
At the very beginning, you know the way they're talking about the goddess, I was at the very beginning, was there a transition between, was she,
Yeah.
or was she?
Oh, there was no such thing as Catholic and Protestant, really. It was Christian and non-Christian. What happened was there was missionaries sent from Rome, really. Palladius would have been the first one, before Patrick. Then there was 2 Patricks, at least. I'm talking about the first one here. There was another one after him. Then there was a guy called Auxilius. But the transition was fairly easy because they had the sun involved and there was a lot of similarities between the teachings of Christianity and some of the things that pagans were doing.
Somebody else prior to that, some sort of goddess.
Danu. Danu.
You didn't get Protestant until after the Reformation.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the way that.
Yeah, it took a long time. The transition just happened fairly naturally. Like, it was through a lot of reasons, like trade and things like that as well. Because if you had a family that wanted to trade, they maybe wouldn't trade with pagans, but they'd trade with Christians. So people would change. That's one of the reasons. Yeah, there's loads of countries. And I know Switzerland have her. In Germany, yeah, there's loads of places. Even in Caribbean places, they have a Bridget, but it's a darker Bridget. But this is like the mythical Bridget. Over there, Bridget is like a harbinger of death in like the voodoo tradition. Yeah, Bridget. But here she's like life and water and fire and stuff, like good stuff, like spring, you know. But what was I going to say? I forgot now. It was so.
Have you talked to people there? Do they feel a sense of ownership?
Yeah.
Well, sorry, for want of a better term.
They do when I tell them what Tom Barron. Like a lot of people would remember Tom Barron, you know.
What are you doing about it?
Well, you'll have to go to Knockbride and ask them. I mean, she is remembered in their schools and in their GAA and in stuff like that. They do remember her, but there's archaeology there. There's stuff that they could be digging up that God knows what they'd find. I'd love if they did a LiDAR. I'll go back through. LiDAR, it's like a ground-penetrating radar. And it gets rid of all the houses, gets rid of all the trees, everything. And it could show you pathways, forts, God knows what, buildings underneath the soil. And it's all in that complex.
And is the actual old church behind the Church of Ireland, is that in private ownership or is it?
I think you can go in there. I think you're allowed in.
But you know, is it, you don't happen to know, is it in public?
I don't know. I presume that the Roman Catholic Church own that. It's in behind the Church of Ireland, though. Yeah.
There's Catholic graves and Protestant graves mixed up in that.
Yeah, yeah.
On Cemetery Sunday in Bride, traditionally they go down there first and
Oh, yeah.
bless the grave. So people would just go in.
Go in, yeah.
So part of it, the access is certainly there.
Yeah.
And we had a priest back about 15 or 20 years ago, and I went to do up the wall and the gates there into that old graveyard, and we spent a bit of money on it. But the priest at the time said that didn't belong to the churches. He obviously knows. So we went ahead and done it. So just to preserve the wall at the ends, because
Yeah, put a top on it.
Cattle could go in and damage walls and stuff like that. So we just preserve the area.
Yeah.
There must have been some connection with St. Bridget in Mount Nugent. The old name of Mount Nugent was Daly's Bridge, but the Church of Ireland is St. Bridget Church,
Yeah.
and there's a St. Bridget's crosses in area entrance over in Stained Glass.
Mm. Oh, yeah, she travelled around. She went to a lot of places. Yeah, she went to a lot of places. I think weren't you saying there was a Virginia, there was a Bridget's Well near Virginia? Yeah. I think she has about 15 or 16 wells. 17 if you count Knockbride. But there's like 3,000 wells, so they're all different saints. Oh, this actual bit here, they call that the playing field. Well, they used to, at least, in like mid-1900s. That Tom Sullivan knew that as the playing field. And they reckoned it was because there was little monasteries and things up here. And that's where the students used to have games, like Talton games and things like that. It's kind of a raised area with a flat top on it. That's a Crannog there. That's a quarry that never should have happened, but it's far too close to Klick Hill for my liking. And that's the fort with the suit train on it. I reckon that's where, it's not entirely clear, but I reckon that's where the Klick Head came out of. It was hidden away in there.
They just dug that up as a family. Has it ever been properly archaeologically?
Yeah, if you go on the monuments thing, it was checked over in '95, I think, or maybe in 2008. But not as intensely as digging it up and taking stuff out of it. It was just surveyed.
That's John Brady works there, just there in front.
That's the main road there.
That's the road over to Knockbride.
Yeah, it's the main road in the middle there. It's a huge complex. And if you look closely, like all those unusual field boundaries, they all mean something, you know. If you were to do like a survey on that, all those lumps and bumps, especially over here, that's the wedge tomb. There's bumps there. You know, it's all there, just waiting to be found. You know. But I think they kind of choose to leave it. They don't want to be digging everywhere, the Monuments Service. They just
Like do something for future generations.
Yeah. Because I know in Annagassan, there's a huge Viking fort in Annagassan. They haven't really dug it. Yeah. They know it's there, but they just... And it was bigger than Wood Quay in Dublin. But they mind it, but they just don't dig it.
Any last questions? No? So I'm going to take this opportunity again to thank John for a wonderful
You're welcome.
talk.
No
As
problem.
I mentioned, he has maps here.
Yeah, if you want to take a picture on your phone or whatever.
And this evening as well, so we have other events coming up in the year. We'll have an archaeology day in July. We'll have an open day in the museum here. We'll also have other talks coming later in the year. So we're collecting emails. If you want to go on our emailing list, you get notification of when the next events are on. Well, thanks very much, John.
You're welcome. Thanks.